You ready to go? You unmuted?
I'm muted.
You are muted?
I am muted.
I think,
I'll show the agenda.
I think we're ready. You can unmute.
Yep, ready to go.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's call the June 2023 ITEC meeting to order. First off, thank you all for joining. That's awfully loud. I do appreciate it on this beautiful day. So I guess I'm gonna move into the
Can you keep it on chat?
PM class graduates. So. Just minutes tonight.
Oh, let me, yeah, I've got the link.
What's that?
Hold on, let me pull up the slides.
Okay.
I've got them.
That's the camera.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, first off, congratulations to everybody that has gone through the POM class. We do appreciate it. And as you heard from the three CEOs, how important it is that you all do this. So this year, or this spring's graduates, not this year, I think we do it twice a year, is we'll start with Adriana Babcock from the Department of Corrections. John Carlson from KDHE. John Fenton from DCF. Kubi Fearborn from DCF. Bethany Odell from Emporia State. Lydia Peterson from Legislative Services, Administrative Services. Alicia Smith from the Kansas Real Estate Commission. Lester Volks, and I hope I pronounced that right if you're on, Lester, from DCF. DCF sent a number of people through. Well done. Jonathan Wake through KDHE from KDHE. And Ruth Ray from Legislative Administrative Services. Again, congratulations. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you. So, or actually, then appointment is this where I announced Judy's resume, just. So, so we have, lost our,
Duncan too.
That Duncan as well. That's
yeah, two, okay. We have lost actually since last meeting, two representatives on ITEC. First, the private sector representative,
Can you see
Judy
this?
Corzine, and then Duncan Frank. For you who know Duncan forever, he was the Inc. Liaison, as I always call him, the Inc. director. So we will be looking to fill those two positions. And hopefully by the next meeting, those will be fulfilled. Okay, roll call. Selena.
Ellie O'Brien,
Here.
Jeff Maxon,
Here.
Alan Weiss,
Here.
Representative Edel Berquist,
Can you check the mic and make sure he's unmuted?
Representative Pam Curtis, Senator J.R. Clay, Senator Jeff Pittman,
Here.
Adam
I think he's in-
Proffitt,
There he is.
Here.
It's okay.
Amber Schultz, Adrian Guerrero,
Here.
Lynn Retz, she will be a little late, Greg Gann,
Here.
Mike Maida,
Here.
Steve Bunk, and Alex Wong.
Here.
Some good little speaker, but. We were just trying, sorry, we're just trying to get the technical difficulties worked out here. I apologize. All right, just to keep the meeting moving at this point. Call for, make a motion for the approval of the agenda. Senator Pittman and Adrian Guerrero seconded, so the agenda is approved. I'll make a motion to approve the March 2023 minutes. I'll take a motion. Senator Pittman. I got a second. Jeff Maxon. So the minutes have been approved. Alex, action items.
Yep, we do not capture any action items from last time, so we are clean, nothing to read.
Okay.
Thank you.
Advisory board updates, education segment. Yeah.
So recently ITEC met the information technology advisory board, and we did go over, a whole lot other than kind of preparing the group for what was going to take place in this meeting here today. ITEC, and the main thing was discussion around the passage of House Bill 2019 and the changes that put in place for the project management definition of the projects, and then there's discussion around the policies. GC moving forward, which is I said 1,100, 1,500, 2,495. So kind of covers the basis on those. If there's last minute feedback before they were not during the Senate was covered.
Thank you, Jeff. So that will take us to the presentation and discussion and possible actions of some policies. So, Alex.
Thank you.
Stand right there for the microphone.
Okay, microphone. Thank you, Kathy. We have go through 3 steps of ITEC policy in the last few meetings. And those are the ITEC policy 1100, 1500, and 9500. And we're going through both ITEC and ITEC for the last 2 meetings to collect feedback. So we have collected all the feedback that is needed and make the appropriate revise on those 3 policies. And it's ready for asking for a vote today to approve those renewal. In addition to that, because of House Bill 2019, we are making some changes with the HEDO reportable criteria, and those changes are also made in the ITEC policy 2400. So you also see the ITEC 2400 is also listed as an item to go through the approval process today. So there's a total of 4 of them today, and I will, and in addition to those policies, there's also standard documents as well. And in the members package, you will see all the policies, the red line of those signifying, and also the clean copy on both the policy and the samples. So we are ready to ask for a vote.
Okay. So let's start with ITEC 1100P. I'll take a motion for approval. Jeff.
Second.
And Senator Pittman was the second. So 1100 has been approved. Thanks. Yes.
Point where the board
Make sure
probably
it's-
have a discussion, take a vote on each one of these.
Okay. Fair enough. Trying to move too quick. So for those who don't know, it's my last one. So. So yeah, so we did have a city. We'll just kind of unwind a little bit. Let's start from the beginning. We had a motion to approve Senator Pittman's. Any discussion on it? Okay, so then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any dissents? All right. 1100 has been passed. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. So that will take us to 1500. ITEC policy 1500. So all those in favor of ITEC 1500, please say aye.
Oh.
All those in favor? Oh,
We should make the motion.
yeah, make the motion, yeah. Yes, thank you. Pittman made the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor? Oh, yeah, discussion. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, all right, 1500 is approved. So that takes us to ITEC 2400. Yeah, take a motion for approval. Senator Pittman makes a motion for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Jeff Maxon seconded it. So, yeah, any discussion on that? Yes, Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just, this is 2400. It looks like it's almost verbatim, like, developed out of the recent legislation. Is that correct, Mr. Wong?
Right, Senator Freeman. So we are basically taking the language from House Bill 2019 and especially like the few language about the criteria that we use instead of using the mandatory threshold of 250,000. We now change to an IT business risk assessment process. And then also the other part is the advice and consult. So last year we have that in the advisor and now it's in the ITEC policy to reflect.
Were there any substantial changes from what was inside the legislation versus this? Did ITEC have any other kind of further modifications to it?
I'm not aware of any.
Very few changes, just that definition change and added to participative review. In the standard, it's been changed
Yeah.
considerably. It was called 2400 AM, it's the standard. But because we're also automating in the service now system, we included those procedures. So the 2400 S is all new. But it's just the step-by-step procedures on how to enter into the new system, as well as how the process works with the advising and consult period and those steps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Alan?
we should probably, I would possibly modify the motion to make this effective July 1, since the statute is not effective until July 1. So the policy in conjunction with it would be become ITEC policy on July 1 to match the statute.
Sure.
If the group thinks that's proper.
I'm good with that.
Sounds good. I'll modify my motion and make it so that it's effective July 1st or whatever the statute becomes effective.
Yep, so July 1st is the statute.
And a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Earl, nursing, seconded. Any discussion? Any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, the ayes have it, so ITEC 2400 has passed. And that takes us to ITEC 95. There, real quick. All right, there I am. Okay, I'll take a motion for approval for ITEC 9500.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Alan. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Jeff Maxon seconded. Any discussion? Adrian?
Yes, Adrian from the nursing board. I have a question on terms of 5.1.2, where it talks about the guest networks, where the WLAN owned and operated by state of Kansas provide unmanaged access to the internet. This network would be considered unsecured. Ooh. In the event that you are hosting meetings and potentially state-owned equipment could be used in any of the state buildings to access information that's available on the public internet. If it's a state-owned device and they don't have access to an authenticated network, would that be considered in violation of this policy?
No, it's Jeff. It's not. It's just an understanding of what you are doing on the network and what it's capable of doing is in terms of, if you're going into your own network, you need to be using the secure network VPN backend type thing, but it's just like any other Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi. It's open. So each agency should have their own specific policies on what they can and can't do.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none. ITEC 9500 is approved. Okay, that takes us to the keto determination and process update. Alex.
Thank you, Kathy, again. Just real quick, I kind of mentioned this already in the ITEC 2400 policy update, where there is a legislature, House Bill 2019 to be specific, that is passed on the last legislative session. And so we are changing the criteria of how keto projects going to be determined starting July 5th. And so last Wednesday, we have presented a webinar, 2 sessions to anybody that's in those changes, both in what are the methods, specifically the Kansas IT business risk assessment process that we have actually also showed and demonstrated, presented here in ITEC last June. That is the same tool that we use to make those determinations starting July 1st. And so we presented that whole process to the group, and also Sarah earlier mentioned about that we're going to change our tool for submission and approval of keto project using a platform called ServiceNow. And so those changes are going to happen in July 1st as well. So we are basically aligning the changes with the change of statute and also the ITEC policy. So the application and the policy are aligned, and the system is built based on the requirements of the new statutory requirements. So those are all presented and recordings are there. So if there's anybody that is interested into going back to look at those recordings for detail, the link is on the Keto website. So feel free to go to the website to see more of that. And other than that, I just want to make sure that I give ITEC an update that these changes are anticipated to happen on July 1st. Any questions for me? All right, hearing none. Thank you.
It is Angela. You know, Sarah?
She is not joined yet. She had a conflict in two.
Okay. Okay. Is it okay that I go out of order? Can we do the updates and come back to her? So, so we don't just have to sit around looking at each other. All right, Angela is going to do a regent's presentation for us. She has a conflict till 2. So we're going to go to staff reports right now, and then we'll come back to the regent presentation here shortly. So first on the list is myself. I'm trying to remember exactly when the last meeting was. I'll just start from maybe duplicating some. A few months ago, talk about our CCMS, our centralized case management project. We've installed 3 more courts: Shawnee, Wyandotte, and Douglas, which makes currently we have 103 of the 105 counties installed. We are going to go live in Sedgwick County this August, basically a month and a half from now. August 7th is the actual go live date. We will go live in Johnson County in 2024, last quarter 2024. The reason they're so far out is they weren't part of the original project. They, for those who may or may not know, in Johnson County, they've been on what they refer to as the gym system for a long time. The court decided that they wanted to go on to the Tyler Odyssey product after the fact, maybe a year in to this, and so hence that's why they're a year farther down the road. We also will be going live right here in this building, what we refer to as the appellate courts, which is the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, with the same system, obviously designed and configured to work in an appellate court. And the plan for that is probably first quarter of sometime next year. We're waiting on some development from the vendor before we can actually go live there. If anybody's interested, that develop, because we're one of the few states that has two levels of appellate court. As I mentioned, we have the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. It's critical if they're working in the same system that at certain times they're not to know what each court is doing. Well, once it's the Supreme Court, it's not as big a deal, but when the Court of Appeals is doing their work, it's critical that the Supreme Court does not know what they're doing. So we're putting those type of things together and making that happen. So I know it will be a happy day for me when all of this is done. It's been a long road, and so that will be good. So other than that, like everybody else, just trying to keep up with general flow of technology and the changes that all brings us is an ongoing challenge, let's say, and keeps us all busy and keeps us all employed. So we shouldn't complain too much about that. So with that, I'll take any questions. Senator Pittman.
I'm going to commend you on all the work you've been doing on that over the years. That's a Herculean effort. I get the courts in that e-file system. There have been different viewpoints that I've heard about the extent and effectiveness of people that are participating in the judicial process, say citizens, being online versus in person.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys standardize that process across the state, or is it up to each judicial district to figure out how they're going to do it and whether they do it, and which courts are going to actually participate in that?
Right. If you're talking about like
Zoom.
online hearings, Zoom hearings, it does, it is the judicial officers call a lot on that. The Supreme Court, we support it, right? And we're all for it in court. Although they're meeting in person now, I mean, for a few years did all Zoom things, but if a judge desires to have in person, they can have in person. Now, I will say that especially some of these sometimes smaller hearings and things like that, there is encouragement, right, for them to use Zoom in particular, if it means when a great majority of your lawyers on this part of the state have to drive 5 hours out for a 15-minute hearing. Is there any way, that we could do Zoom and save the time and effort to do that? And I think for the most part, our judges have been pretty reasonable to that change. But it is a change, and I will say that we continue to try to work on that, to try to make that, to realize that choice is available to them. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Any other questions? If not, Jeff with the executive branch.
Thank you, Kelly. Jeff Maxon, interim executive branch CETO. Have been incredibly busy, especially as legislative session has wound down. Obviously, some bills taking place. I know Alan will discuss a little bit, but what are the impacts that we'll have on executive branch? So again, House Bill 2019 and the Cybersecurity Act provision updates. Working through that, the project reporting and project definitions, et cetera, as we've been gearing up for that. Been working on setting up a more or less a cybersecurity roadshow to go collect requirements from local governments for the federal, state, and local cybersecurity grant program. So that'll be rolling out here in the next few months, so we can get a statewide cybersecurity plan put together and begin leveraging those grant funds out in the local areas and begin accepting projects. Again, wrapping up, starting projects related to ARPA funding and network modernization, cybersecurity, and then also a unified licensing platform to meet some intent on digital professionalizing across the executive branch, and trying to get that rolled out as well. So again, a lot of big efforts, a lot of busy work as we are trying to, come out of legislative session and get ready for the next fiscal year. So a lot of moving pieces at the moment. So that stand for any questions.
Do we have any status update on the Senate Bill 66 rollout for the professional licensure verifications?
Yep. So high level, and I'll defer a little bit to Alex, but we do have a signed statement of work for the first agency that'll be rolling out onto that platform. So we do have a vendor that was awarded the RFP. We're working on the pilot agency, and we'll use that as kind of a cookie cutter template to start bringing on other agencies. And then D of A is working on their portion for that lookup portal that Senate Bill 66 requires that all agencies integrate into as a one-stop shop for professional licensure verification. So, Alex, do you have anything to update on that?
We'll have a part about the in verification portal, a central verification portal that is going to be set up by Department of Administration. And that part, Josh White, the CIO from Department of Administration, is working with us together to come up with what are the specifications. And he's intended to reach out to departments like yours that is not going to be on the enterprise platform and try to get those requirements and specification gathered. So you should be hearing in the next couple months. Thank you.
People online stand by. We're addressing a technical issue here. On there, can you hear you?
Greg Gang, can you say hi or just testing 1, 2, 3?
I can say both. Hi, testing 1, 2, 3.
See him talking, but we're not hearing him.
I can hear you, Kelly.
Yeah, he's waving.
I can hear you.
We can hear him online as well.
He is not muted, but it'd be hard to hear Angela if we don't have any sound. So They can hear us, but we can't hear them through the speaker. That's.
No.
That's for the microphone.
Try.
This is just a speaker, just a speaker.
Can somebody say hi now? Let's see if it works now.
Hello. Hello.
I hear you saying hello, but I'm online.
Now we can see the mic and camera. Can you guys hear me? This is Angela.
Yeah, a little better. So thank you. Okay, sorry for the little delay, but we didn't figure your presentation would go really well if we couldn't hear you. So, all right. So I'm going to turn the Regents presentation over. Going to talk about we lost our redundant connection during finals. Let's talk. That sounds a little ominous. So, Angela, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Tim, are you on here? Are you able to, are we able to hear you, Tim? Yours look grayed out. Tim Pearson. I don't know if you guys gave me some kind of special privileges. Yeah, his looks like just like mine did. I can see it from here. It has a little like
You got
no
unmute.
mic, no camera.
Can you unmute him, sir?
Yeah, try it. Then you should be able to unmute and talk.
Tim, you can try to unmute and talk now.
Well, I'll go on. I'll do the best I can. And if you guys can work on getting him, his camera and mic are still grayed out, it looks like. If you guys can work on that, he would be great to have his voice because of the technical perspective of this. And his knowledge there is really bar none, especially compared to mine when it comes to all the details of what our redundant network looks like. So having him involved is pretty critical, Sarah, if you can keep working on that. In the meantime, I'll share my screen. I'm hoping that you guys can see tulips. Can you guys see tulips?
We might need microphone.
Sarah.
There they go.
Angela, I'm in now with mic and camera.
Yes. Yay! It's great. I was like, it was not gonna be as much fun without you, Tim. Hey, folks, can you see my screen, the red and yellow tulips?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll hit it. I know we only have like 15 minutes, so we'll work on this and then take any questions that you have along. So I'm Angela Neria. I am the Chief Information Officer at Pittsburgh State University. Tim, will you tell them what you do for us?
Sure. And I am Tim Pearson, and I run the data center, the voice and data networks, and am responsible for the IT security folks.
Awesome. Thank you. So what is a redundant connection anyway? And what does PSU's connection look like? There's a lot of people on the call today, so we're not going to assume that everybody has a redundant connection or knows what a redundant connection is, Tim's going to take a minute and kind of explain what the redundant connection we are on in Kansas looks like. We get our connection through CANREN, the Kansas Research and Education Network, and then we'll kind of zoom in on a very simple graphic of what Pitt State's connection looks like. So Tim, I'm going to show our beautiful wild CANREN graphic for you to talk to.
Okay, very good. Well, if you'll kind of just take a look at that outside box with the various colored arrows in it, to try to simplify all of that topology down, Pittsburgh State University and the other Regents institutions in Kansas are connected to a counter-rotating ring provided by the Kansas Research and Education Network. And what that means is, from a drawing a big circle on the blackboard and putting a little square with each university around the circle. And we each have two fiber connections, one that enters from the east, one that enters from the west. You could think it entering from the left and the right if you want to. And as long as one of those two connections is working, we can talk to every other connection on the ring. It normally takes the most efficient route, the shortest direction to get where it needs to go. But if one of the links goes away, the other one can go all the way around and talk to our neighbor that we would normally have talked to over here. So we have to lose both halves of the ring for us to lose connectivity to the outside world. And we have to do it in a relatively specific way as well. We're located in southeast Kansas, and our neighbors, both to the east and to the west on this ring, are quite some distance away. So the worst case scenario would be the one that we experienced, which is you have a fiber cut on the left-hand side between you and your nearest neighbor, and we have a fiber cut on the right-hand side between us and our nearest neighbor. So there was no neighbor to talk to do any rerouting of traffic or any other way to try to get internet service or any other kind of service to us. We literally had no one to say hello to on either of the two fibers that come in. And I would say that these two fibers are diversely routed from our campus all the way around the ring up to Kansas City, up to all of the other member institutions. That fiber is not in the same ditch anywhere. So this required two different crews working with two different backhoes to cause us to lose both our left and right hand connectivity. Does that make sense?
It does, Tim. And I shared our more zoomed in version speaking to, just our connection from Pittsburgh State University to Kansas City and Wichita. So you guys can kind of see a very simplified version of what that looks like. And in addition, it's important that we also we have two data sites on campus. We have two data centers on campus that we back up to. So back up to Wichita State University and their data center. So if we have a big, Joplin-sized tornado, which we're just 30 minutes from Joplin, Missouri, and Tim and I actually live in Missouri. So if we have something like that in Pittsburgh, we have our data backed up to Wichita, and being on this ring working in a redundant fashion like it was designed to for that data backup is critical. So we did indicate that on here so you would kind of understand the criticality of that, especially during finals. So not only did this happen, it happened during finals. So it happened on a Thursday, I believe, during finals week. So, and we'll talk a little bit about the timing of that. So a lot of people have said, so what caused the outage anyway? And you got from Tim that there were two backhoes. They were not in collusion, but I'll be honest with you, when this happened, we were like, we really thought that we might have been targeted for something because, we have, every once in a while we'll get a message from CANREN saying, hey, we're having to do some work on this node in Kansas City, or there's been a cut between Paola and wherever, and no big deal. Life goes on because we have a redundant ring. And in fact, we were one of the first regions, maybe the first region to have redundancy in the state of Kansas. And we've had it for many, many years. And I've been a CIO for 25 years. And always had redundancy in my journey. This is the first time this has happened, and I hope that it's the only time that it will happen. So what caused the outage? Tim's exactly right. It was two backhoes. The first one was it was outside of Paola, kind of between that exit at Lewisburg and on over to Paola. There was some folks in an Evergy backhoe that went through how many pairs of fiber, Tim? Oh, we can't hear you.
Excuse me, it was several dozen. The Kansas Research and Education Network gets a good part of its fiber from the Kansas Fiber Network, who is an aggregator. And they got into the aggregator's path and took out not only the higher ed fiber in Kansas, but many, many, many others.
So when that happened, we immediately got a message from CanRen, not with all the details, but just saying, hey, you're not on redundant ring right now. So there has been an incident, and they gave us a general knowledge of what that incident was, but nothing more. It happened at 10:12 a.m. that day. We weren't too worked up about it because we have a redundant ring, and we weren't too excited about it. We didn't even know who had done it or what the issue exactly was. But then at 4:39, things more or less went dark for us. So 4:39 p.m., which it was kind of a good time of day, I guess, if there could be a good time of day. It's at the end of the day, we have students taking finals, but it's night classes, so there's fewer finals happening at that time, but it's not ideal. But at 4:39, everybody knew something was wrong. And that was another backhoe, and that was Cox Communication, if I remember correct, and it was by Belle Plaine, Kansas. So from that point on, things were a little rough. Tim, you want to speak to that experience and your feelings at that moment?
It started out being pure disbelief because, like Angela, I've been doing this stuff now for over 40 years and been doing redundant ring stuff for over 35 years. Ever experienced a counter rotating ring have two cuts and isolate one of the customers on the ring. Used to engineer this stuff for rural electric co-ops in Missouri in a former life, and this was very hard to fathom that it had really happened. And as Angela said, one of the first things that crossed my mind was, is this malicious? Is someone mad at Kansas Fiber or mad at Kansas universities and has the sophistication to be able to launch such an attack? But it actually turned out to be just two independent cases of stupid. These folks either didn't call and get their locate as I think Dwayne suggested, or if they did, they didn't pay much attention to it. But when we saw the isolation occur, obviously that required some out of band communication with CanRen. But we learned pretty quickly their NOC is really on top of these kinds of things. We normally get notified within minutes of outages. And we learned that Kansas Fiber was reporting that we'd had a second cut. And at that point, I think my approach was, this is going to be an outage that's going to last hours, not days. It's going to be futile to try to engage in recovery activities that are going to take days, because this will be back in service. One half or the other of this ring is going to be back in service in 24 hours or less, worst case, was kind of what my gut told me. So we began to take a look at things that we might be able to do to mitigate the problem. One of the things that we did was work very closely, and Angela can speak better to this than I can, with our university marketing department to let faculty, staff, and especially students know what had happened and know kind of as we knew it, the updates as the recovery effort went on. And I'll let Angela speak in more detail to that.
So yeah, the good segue. How was information shared throughout the outage? It was maybe over communicating on our part, but there is like any outage, there were lots of moving parts. So we felt like lots of communication was better than little. And Canren, I don't know how many of you have the opportunity to work with them, but I can't speak highly enough about their level of professionalism and communication in everything we do with them. But it really shone through at this moment in time for us. And keep in mind, most of those folks that work at Canren had never experienced anything like this either. So, this just kind of gives you a little bit of a timeline of what we experienced. I'll try and move Tim over here. The lacing / payola cut, timeline. We began back channeling with Canren, our PSU IT team, our PSU leadership team, and talking about, hey, this happened, not too concerned. And then the Bell Plain cut happened, and we were officially alarmed at that point. I mean, alarmed is putting it mildly, because not only did we have finals happening, we knew we'd have finals starting early the next day, and we have faculty trying to submit grades. We have graduation, we have transcripts, we have all the stuff. There's some really critical timelines in everybody's jobs that are sitting on this call today, and beginning of school and the end of a semester are big critical timelines in higher ed. So at that point, we immediately began messaging to campus and using social media, continued our back channeling. And you can kind of see throughout this that we message to campus regularly, and really kept our leadership team informed. In fact, I think most of our leadership, President's Council, President, Vice President leadership was in Topeka at KBOR meetings. So, they're dealing with KBOR meetings and all of the energy that goes into that, and getting these crazy messages from Angela on top of that. That was a long night. Tim and I stayed up the whole night so that we could, and so did the Canren folks, and so did other people from our department, so that we could communicate. Our marketing team stayed awake so that our feeling was we needed to let students and faculty and staff know, no matter what time it was, what was going on. We have people that live on our campus, they're used to using those resources any time of day that they need them, whether it's for studying or if it's for watching Netflix or gaming. They're used to having those resources and they pay for them. So we were very communicative. And in the end, by the next day, when everything was fully restored, and you can kind of see where we were partially restored at 3:25 a.m. We were able to at least have a connection, and then we had our full redundant connection by the next afternoon at 2:05. But as far as campus knew, they got out to the internet, the next day. They were happy. But that final message that we sent out to campus, we really did receive. Tim and I felt like heroes. Like, keep in mind, it's December, it's cold. I really think most of the people on campus honestly thought that Tim and I were outside reconnecting fiber with headlamps on in a ditch near Paola. I mean, you would have thought that we went out and did this ourselves, but the gratitude was huge from across our campus. And I think that this communication piece that we did has a lot to do with it. And that's really what our story is about. It's not a technical story. It's about how we took advantage of using communication and transparency to share with our campus what was going on. And I would say that if Canren were on this call today, they would say the same thing. We had to be careful about how we position things, because we didn't want to blame. We didn't want to play the blame game, with Evergy and Cox, or Kansas Fiber Network or Canren. So we worked very carefully with our social media messaging and our press releases, and did those in tandem with Canren to make sure that we were, one, transparent, two, speaking the facts, and three, that they saw us as a team with Canren and Kansas Fiber Network in resolving this issue. So here's some examples of some of the things that went out. And all of those things happened, in a 24-hour period. I would say Tim and I were pretty we were pretty knocked out, tired, by the next day. It was one of those things where your mind had to be sharp for 24 hours to communicate and do all the testing we needed to before we said, okay, it's go time and everything's back to normal, folks. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we shared in terms of communication. Ongoing challenges that we faced after the connection was reinstated. We did have some, and Tim can speak to that because that cut up by Paola, it was through several dozen pairs of fiber, and there was a lot of refraction. So it wasn't magically fixed in the same day. And I'll let Tim kind of speak to that.
Yeah, the cut in Paola was actually not done by a backhoe. It was done by a boring machine. So if you can imagine a bit going through the earth, grabbing onto this fiber and then winding the fiber around and around and around and pulling it in a relatively straightforward, straight way, both directions, that caused microfractures way off in both directions in the glass because of the way the fiber was basically pulled into kind of in line with the way it was running. Whereas the backhoe, when it dug it up over on the Kansas City side, that was more of an angle. The force was applied at an angle and the brakes were much more localized. So we did deal with losing redundancy several times for several hours on the Paola cut as they found more and more of these cracked but not broken sections of fiber that their test equipment revealed as they began to do more detailed testing of the circuits. I mean, in the beginning, they were glad that light was getting from end to end, and so were we. And so we got up and running as quickly as we could. And they were good about not taking the link down for further diagnosis until they knew that we had redundancy on the Kansas City side, that the side that the backhoe got had been repaired. And they were good to coordinate and not try to do repairs on both sides at the same time. And it made us much more nervous when we would lose one side than it used to, and still does. Just human nature to be risk averse to something that's happened recently.
And just a few more slides here. What did we do that during the crisis that we were most pleased with? Tim, you can share what you were most pleased with, and I'll share what I was most pleased with.
Well, I was just really happy with the communication plan and the way that the community reacted. As Angela said, we didn't throw anybody under the bus. You didn't hear Evergy or Cox mentioned anywhere. But in a way, the scope of this outage, not just Pittsburgh State, but local school districts whose circuits come to Pitt State to jump on Canrin, Pittsburgh, who also routes their internet service to Pitt State and then jumps onto the Canrin ring from there. When we explained, people understood that we had a backup. We did not go to the lengths of explaining a ring and how a ring works. We talked about we had a primary circuit and a backup circuit, and both of them got dug up within hours of one another. And it has taken down Pitt State and USD 250 and the city of Pittsburgh and some community colleges and some other folks. So people understood that this was not something that a reasonable effort on our part could have prevented, and they were very understanding. And as Angela said, they were cheering us on and efforts and those kinds of things, as opposed to, you dummies, how could you let this happen?
I think we only got one email like that, but no, I'm kidding. We didn't. People were awesome. They were amazing. I think that I am very happy with the communication as well. And I think really what makes me the most pleased about dealing with this crisis is that we're planners, and we ritually update our disaster recovery plan every 6 months. We have a team that does that. And this doesn't constitute a disaster like a fire or a tornado or a flood or something like that. But the lessons we've learned in that disaster recovery planning really kicked in with this. And I think that we felt very capable of handling the communication part of it. We didn't have a lot technically to handle till we came back online and did some testing. And then we pulled people in to help with that. But I think, knowing that we have a DR plan in place and that we do visit it every 6 months and update it, I think that gave us some real confidence in how we approached it. So I'm really happy and pleased with that. Lessons learned. The first thing I said to Tim, which is probably a lesson for me, is how can we make sure this never happens again? And Tim's like, Angela, this is probably a once in a career thing, but I'll look into it, And I think the lessons learned for me was really, anything could happen. And at some point you have to weigh, risk and cost. And we have a third connection with a different provider in town in Pittsburgh? Yeah, we probably could. Does it make sense to use funding, tax dollars to pay for that in a once in a lifetime / once a career event? Probably not. Tim had to talk me off the ledge on that one. So I think for me, a lessons learned on that is, really not to be over presumptuous about how we can fix this. There's sometimes bad things are going to happen, and how we react to them is really where the gold is. And I think we did a good job with that. I don't know. That's kind of my thought. Tim, what about you?
No, I feel exactly the same way. I can say two things with almost complete certainty. We will lose our internet connectivity to our campus again at some point in the future, and it will not be the same scenario that this one was. It's not going to be 2 fiber cuts. It's going to be a corrupted BGP routing table in a core backbone router somewhere, or some other, or cyber attack, or some other cause. So I don't think we want to spend, and that's what I told Angela, I don't think we need to spend large dollars playing whack-a-mole when the next mole guaranteed to pop his head up in a different hole. It's not going to be the same, thing. However, there is something that CanRen is planning on doing that I think could be beneficial to us. And if you're on another similar network, you might talk to your people about it. They're going to build a little VPN kit that's basically a router and an Ethernet switch and the ability to establish a virtual private network. And now we were down 11 hours. As I suspected, this was not a long-term outage. They would barely have had time to drive down here and hook that thing up before it would have been no longer needed. But it could have shaved an hour or two off of our downtime. But in the future, if there was a longer disconnection, if they brought that kit down and we could get any internet from anybody, including a cell phone hotspot, we could have hooked that VPN box up and had access for authentication and some basic connectivity, so students could have, for instance, been able to log into Office 365 and check their email. Some of those basic, all I really need to do is compare the password they entered with the password you have. That's very low bandwidth. We could have done that with a VPN box and a cellular Wi-Fi connection to one of the cell carriers. And CanRen is looking at making that kind of a little emergency kit available for its membership should they lose connectivity for any reason, including one like this.
And that concludes our presentation. I know we probably went over by a few minutes. I'm sorry we got started late. Questions, thoughts, comments, please feel free to send them to Tim and I. We sure don't want to hijack your meeting. I've shared our presentation with Sarah, and you can absolutely share it with anyone. Our email addresses are on the last slide. And I would highly recommend, if you have really technical questions, we can get you in touch with CanRen. They're amazing to work with, and they're definitely true professionals and really care about what they do. So they're also great people to visit with.
Any questions for Angela? Well, Angela, thank you. I will commend you on keeping your guys' calm and collectedness there and getting that back up. That had to be kind of scary for sure. So thank you for sharing your time with us. Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Okay. We're going to go back to our discussions and reports. So I think we left off at Alan.
right. Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Alan Wise. I'm the CETO for the legislative branch, and I have a brief update. The 2023 legislative session that concluded on April 23rd. That was a Friday, so got done kind of early. Usually we go into May, but this year we ended in April. Some bills of note, HB 2019's already been talked about, but that's the bill that modified the state IT statutes that originally started out in HB 2077 and 2078. That was all combined into 2019. And that's the bill that's been talked about here of changing the way the projects are defined, JCIT's role in the projects, and also creates reporting requirements for cybersecurity incidents, and then updates the membership for the ITEC on the legislative members. And that, as was noted, that law becomes effective July 1st of this year. HB 2314, that's the TikTok ban bill that passed the House and was sent over to the Senate and referred to Senate, Fed, and State Affairs, and that's where the bill sits right now. It's in that committee, and since we're in mid-biennium, it could be taken up next year, so it's still out there. HB 2184, which was the budget bill, there was a proviso in that under the legislature's budget for a constituent relationship management software for the legislators to be proposed and implemented by December 1st of this year. So Legislative Administrative Services is working on that project, and we are assisting as needed. SB 66 has also been talked about. That's the Interstate Teachers Mobility Compact that looks like the executive branch has got some work to do on that. So just wanted to give some quick numbers on the virtual state house. A couple of years back, we implemented what we call the virtual state house, which was to put in video conferencing systems in all the committee rooms and the chambers in the state house. So we have quite a few room systems now, and during the legislative session from January to April, we had a total of 1,760 meetings, and those totaled up to a little bit over 2,100 hours, which is an average meeting time of about 71 minutes per meeting. And there's a lot of sharing that goes on in those meetings too. In the committees, people that are testifying do a lot of sharing of files and presentations. There was 546 shares during all those meetings. And the systems work pretty good for us. We have good quality in the system's been reported at 99.5%, and the room quality is up to 99.9%. So that's been doing very well for us. And of course, we're streaming all those meetings to the public on the YouTube streaming service. We also have another streaming service called Harmony, where you can view all the legislative meetings. We have our KLIS modernization project. KLIS is our system that we process all of our bills and update the statutes and many of the associated documents. That is in progress now with analysis, design, and development. And again, we're looking at implementation in October 2024 to be used for the 2025 session. And that's the end of my report, and I can be available for any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Alan. You want to introduce?
Yep. And so moving on to the CISO update, I'm going to hand it over. This is Jeff Max. I'm going to hand it over to Mark Abraham, who is the Deputy CISO for Executive Branch.
Thank you, Jeff. Mark Abraham, as Jeff said. Can you guys hear me all right? Are you guys able to hear me all right?
Yes, Mark.
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So nothing earth shattering here. As you can see, bad actors continue to exploit the vulnerabilities that are out there. Corruption, misinformation, and deterioration of reliability. So just want to advocate again that the best defense is a proactive one, and keep patching systems, keep up with the vulnerabilities, keep scanning, and make sure you have good cyber hygiene. Because most of these, I won't say most of them, but a lot of these are a result of just poor patching practices. Phishing attacks are getting a little more sophisticated with the advent of AI. Bad actors are able to use AI to craft better looking emails and create a greater level of deception. It used to be that you were able to pretty readily identify something due to poor grammar and that. So extra diligence on that part would definitely be in order. Keep your eyes out. They're definitely taking advantage of AI. With that, I don't have anything else. I'll turn it back over to you guys unless there's questions. Thank you.
All right. That takes us to the ITEC chair rotation. Jeff.
Per Kansas statute 75-7202 subsection C, the chairperson of the council shall be drawn from the chief information technology officers, with each chief information technology officer serving a one-year term. The term of the chairperson shall rotate among the chief information technology officers on an annual basis. The executive branch CETO acted as the chair in 2021, with Kelly O'Brien, judicial branch CETO, taking over in 2022. Per this established schedule, Alan Weiss, legislative branch CETO, will take the position of chair starting with the next meeting scheduled in September.
Thank you. Congratulations, Alan. Appreciate that. Do we have any, I don't believe we had any new action items. Do we have?
Comments from board members.
Oh, yes, I did miss that. Man, I'm really trying to get out of here quick or get rid of this. Any comments from board members? Senator Pittman?
Just two things. Contact me while we're meeting here, and they were having a hard time finding our meeting on YouTube. So I don't know how we're streaming this. I don't normally look at the stream for this meeting.
So this meeting is the first one that we have used Microsoft Teams as the streaming platform. So any public thing go into registration link and actually be able to attend publicly. So that will be the same platform that we may use for streaming and conducting the meeting.
We weren't able to stream today. We will be streaming the next meeting. We had some issues with the access.
This question, would people be able to still find the stuff on YouTube, or will there be a link on ITEC? So we'll have a post recording on YouTube, and then the streaming will be through the Microsoft Teams. Is that right?
That's right. Good.
All right. Fantastic. And I was just gonna ask the committee if we might have a motion where we might ask the ITAB. Just a consideration, ITAB to consider looking at AI and doing a survey of what's being talked about across the states over the next year, and look at what actions we might need to consider, from ITEC's perspective. If anybody's open to that, I'll make a motion that we suggest ITAB take AI up and review what's going on across the nation and any recommendations from the federal government that might be coming down over the next year, and come back to ITEC in 6 months to a year with a recommendation.
So this is Jeff Max, executive branch CETO. So I agree. We do need to look at that. We will probably need to look at a working group formed out of ITAB, because ITAB itself is not something that does specific work per se. So
Do work.
to do work to do this. And so this is something we'll take on from executive branch, because we do have cooperation with the other states on what that looks like. And so from executive branch, we actually are looking at, OITS recently did publish a policy for generative AI, and we'll be looking at something more broad. But we are collaborating with the other states as well to see what is coming out. We're actually pretty far ahead of some of the others.
So you
So,
don't think the ITAB group should get involved with anything on it yet?
well, just as it being, it's not necessarily a working group from that perspective itself. So we'd have to just draw on members to create a working group to review it.
All right,
Put
so
something
never mind.
together. So,
Withdraw that.
so.
Cool.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Chair. Al.
Thank you. I should have covered this in my update, but I just wanted to say that we've been experiencing better process with our better outcomes with our staffing efforts over the past several months. I don't know if everybody else is experiencing that or not, but with me today is John Langer. He is our new Director of Technical Services. So he was promoted to that position in April. So John comes from Kansas State University, where he was a broadcast engineer there for many years. So he brings a lot of expertise to the legislature. Also, we brought on a new IT security engineer. His name is Michael Murphy. I believe he's online today. He has a master's degree now in cybersecurity. So we're happy to have him on to help us with our policies and security of our systems. So that's just a brief staffing update in the legislature.
Okay, I think that leaves us with adjournment. So I'll take a motion to adjourn. Senator Pittman and Adrian, we are adjourned. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you.